So namaste and good evening. We are at session number 4 in our FDP on Indian Knowledge Systems and Introduction in collaboration with St. Mary's College, Yusufzada, Hyderabad. And I would like to extend on behalf of Team NLD gratitude to the patron of this FDP, Dr. Jaimol Cross, Principal of the college, Convener Dr. Soumya Kumar Madam, Assistant Professor, Department of English and Languages, and the coordinator of this FDP, Shima N. Madam, Assistant Professor, Department of Science. If any of you are with us, most welcome, and we would love to hear your thoughts on how this program has been going on so far. So once again, gratitude to the organizing team from the college. And today's topic is very, very interesting, and we are shifting to a different domain of IKS from our discussions on holistic development, equanimity, balance, practicing self-discipline, having a routine, and the good values that Yoga Darshan instills in us. Today, Dr. Pratibha will help us navigate through the ideas on politics and governance from a Bharatiya lens. So over to you, Dr. Pratibha.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Nidhi. And yes, we will start with this session. But before that, the interesting IKS certificate that you were talking of, it was so interesting. I wish I had all the time to really join all those certificate courses myself. So good luck to you for all those certificate courses. Yeah. All right, so I'll just get to my slideshow. So first, let me just acknowledge Dr. Nidhi Shenarulkar. You can see that this actually the PPT or the PDF version of the PPT is solely done by her. I was unable to really make my own PPTs because I was traveling and all. It was very kind of her to kind of share, because both of us belong to the same domain of political science. We have done our bachelor's from political science. So she was kind enough, and I was quick to grab the opportunity of taking her work. So I will be expanding on what Dr. Nidhi has put up over here. And definitely I would be wanting Dr. Nidhi also to, join in this session and adding up to more if I have missed on something at these points. So let's just begin with, and here this is, the session will comprise that why we need to study politics and governance from IKS perspective. What are the key ideas of politics and governance from IKS perspective? Again, we may look through Kautilya's Shastra, just giving a little brief highlights of what the text contains, some little bit of comparison between the Indian and the Western political philosophy. So let's start with that. Why are we talking about politics? Like, why politics? In the sense that we could have talked about other subjects also. And of course, which normally in IKS, all subjects are taken off. But politics really holds a very important part in any civilization, right? Because it is under political domain that, the fundamental questions about, what decisions to be made, how the decisions are made, who will decide, who will benefit. So this is a kind of, the political structure kind of provides a framework, right, within all the societies, that how a society will function, right? The political institutions, what is legitimate, what is not legitimate, what is collective identity. So there are so many nuances, so many factors that go into for a society to run, right? And it is politics that decides, right? Who gets what, when, how, where. So politics is the soul of a society, a soul of the social organization, because it establishes an order. It establishes an order of justice. It decides who gets empowered. It creates a social harmony. It kind of looks after the conflict, right? So so it is politics that really shapes the kind of society that we live in. So based on this, we understand that how politics is important, and we need to understand this aspect. So, I mean, before we go, like, I just wanted to also kind of bring this to the notice that because I also teach political science, and normally when political science is taught in the class, it is always the Western perspective, right? We always start with Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and all. So it becomes very important that we need to know that when we start, like I was just sharing with Dr. Nidhi right now, that when I start with my political class, I normally start with that, okay, what do you know about the Indian system of political science? And to my utter surprise, that though they may not be organized, the students may not be organized in their thoughts, but they do have ideas. They do talk about things which makes you feel good that it's not completely that they are bereft of what the Indian knowledge system is. They may not know it as an Indian knowledge system, but they do know that this has been there. So why should we study politics and governance from IKS perspective is one of the very, very prominent reasons is because of the Western ideas, as I said. There is a dominance of Western ideas, right? And there is so much of influence, colonial influence in our systems, in the way we kind of talk. So Western theories kind of shape our political system. Now, the whole problem is that, the Western people think that they are very developed. They think that they are very modern, and they think that the other states, other colonial states, were all very primitive, right? They were not advanced, they were not modern, and so they thought that their model is the best model, and therefore, a lot of influence of the Western ideas are there in our political system, right? So. Even if we say that after the post-independence, India did retain the Western political framework, right? I mean, the parliamentary system is there, the bureaucratic governance is there. And so this actually doesn't really talk about our system, right? When we say that there is political issues of each region will be very complex, right? So how can the Western, they have a different setup, they have a different system, they have a different culture. How would that particular model be, very beneficial to the indigenous body of, our system? So politics can be done in a local and a cultural context, right? It must align with our local values. It must align with our cultural values, our Indian traditions, right? So our system of governance was purely very different, which because of the influence or the dominance of the Western ideas got marginalized, right? So our rich indigenous political wisdom, right, where we have our Vedas, we have our Itihas, we have several texts, which actually is deeply rooted into our system, into our cultural system. Now that totally got marginalized, and the dominance of Western ideas, their influence was totally overpowered here. So therefore therefore the IKS perspective becomes important because it will help us. It will help us to reclaim, it will help us to, get connected to our own intellectual independence, our grounding politics, our ethical, our cultural, our spiritual principles, right? So our Indian system of governance is, where when we talk of power, like, so for us, power is not creating a dominance. For us, power is to serve people, right? We are guided by the whole concept of dharma. Decision making is guided by the concept of dharma, right? So this kind of an understanding is marginalized, and we are looking at ourselves, through the Western lens. So therefore it becomes important that we understand what our ancient system of governance or politics was, and which is so relevant, not just to our country now, but it is relevant to the world at large. So, setting the tone for this, let me just come to the history part of it, where often we say that, India, the existing politically became 1947, which personally I feel that, okay, in a very technical way, when we say that, the proper political existence or the union of India came after 1947, but I still feel that we had great dynasties which actually brought even politically the country together. May not be the entire subcontinent, but this is my personal understanding that if you talk about the dynasties of the Guptas and the Mauryas and all, they had almost, brought politically also India together. But let's just take this way that, all right, we were not there before 1947, but it did not mean that India did not exist, right? So we call it Bharat Varsha, right? May not be politically, may not have been politically unified, but the idea India existed, right? It existed as a civilization, right? So our civilization existence, we can see it through our ancient text. We can see it through our, go to the ancient period. You have, as I said, the fragmented political entities, which I say that were there. We were as political entities in the period of the Mauryan Empire, in Gupta Empire. We were unified parts of India was there, right? You come to the medieval period, the regional kingdoms, the Cholas, the Pallavas, the Rajputas, the Palas, like they were independent systems, but they all shared their cultural, their language, their spiritual aspirations. They were all there together, right? So therefore, we can very convincingly say that the Bharat Varsha or India, whatever you call it by names, but it existed, right? It was there. So what defined us basically, if you go from the IKS perspective, what defined us was by dharma, right? We were defined by dharma. We were defined by a sacred geography. We were defined by our shared philosophies. We were defined by our spiritual lineages, right? So the whole idea of Bharat Varsha existed as a civilizational, cultural, and spiritual entity. It may not have been politically unified, but Bharat Varsha existence was there. Strong existence was there, right? So we can give little credit or whatever, that the modernization part, and what even credit. It was only after independence that our leaders then brought us politically together. So I think we are totally on the same page when we say that nobody can really question that, where was India? It was only after British that we became India. No, it's not that. We were definitely there, strongly there, and for a very, very long time we were there, right? So that's one part of it. We'll touch upon this part of IKS as a perspective about the tradition of politics and governance, what actually we mean by IKS, what perspective we have. So we'll take a little time in this and try to kind of elaborate on this. On the screen, you can see that in points it's been talked about that our system gave a lot of importance to the dharma as in over here, not in terms of religion, but I think duties in Hindi, I mean कर्तव्य के ऊपर जो strong हमारा emphasis था, that's the base, that's the core foundation of the IKS tradition, if I can put it in a short manner. So whether you call it Rajniti or whether you call it Niti Shastra, you call it Raj Dharma governance, whatever you call it, the aim was to maintain the order of the society. The aim was to maintain dharma, justice. The aim was to maintain the prosperity of the region, right? So as I said previously, that power was seen as service and not as dominance, right? So the role of king was very important over here, and his responsibilities really played a very important part. So the king was basically, he was the trustee of the people, right? He was bounded by dharma, by kartavya, right? His legitimacy rested on the public welfare, right? On the moral conduct. So, I mean, a very easy example when we talk about the role of king, we only think of Ram and Ram Rajya, how he symbolized the ideal governance, right? Which is totally rooted in justice and compassion, right? So basically the duty of protection, the duty of welfare towards the people, right? So, and so once that the maintenance of social harmony is there, then it's about, having prosperity. It is talking about trade, it talks about uh, education, it talks about health, it talks about environment. All these are extension of the duty of the king, right? So for example, in Arthashastra, when it comes to taking care of people, like the policy of granaries for crisis management is quite well taken under the welfare policy in Arthashastra, right? Similarly, when we talk about the adherence of dharma, right? The king is subject to dharma, right? For example, ensuring justice and restrained in power. So he could not use his power in the winds, or he could not use his power the way we see how power is used these days. But he's bounded by his own dharma, so his power also has responsibilities. So in Mahabharata, they say that without dharma, a king who does not uh, rule with dharma, it is absolutely meaningless, right? So even Mahabharata upholds that kingship without dharma is meaningless, right? Similarly, the code of conduct of the rulers, right? That they used to have a kind of a what do you call, checklist, for them, the do's and don'ts, right? The code of conduct for rulers was also kind of prescribed. In Manusmriti, emphasis on self-control and justice as a kingly virtue is talked about, right? So truth, fairness, humility, consultation with the wise counsel, right? These were the uh, areas where the ruler had to look in a very minute manner, right? So the duty of the king, governance, was moral duty, ensuring justice, social harmony, protection of dharmic institutions and nature. And this is all evident just not in the text, but even if you see the Ashoka's edict over there, so demonstration of Raj Dharma in action through compassion and non-violence has been talked about, right? So how our tradition of politics and governance is based on dharma, Raj Dharma, duties over rights, right? Accountability and transparency is also very equally given importance, right? For example, the Sabha and Samitis, they kind of embodied the participatory form of the governance, right? There used to be continuous audits and checks that was happening, which was taking care of, you know, uh, how well the administration was taking over, right? So the duties, the kartavyas take over, believing that when duties are upheld, then the rights are naturally secured, right? So in a similar way, the benevolent state, non-encroaching, non-predatory, the power was so sacred, that the state avoided any kind of an exploitation or overreach, right? In fact, they say that uh, uh, the kings are warned that any excessive of power caution, or even for that matter, taxing people a lot. These are kind of, actions where you ensure that you are being a state which is taking care of its people, right? So, culture, spirituality in politics, where do you see this? This was like eons, years ago. Our people had such a foresight that they talked just not about politics in terms of ruling or bringing a social order, but how spirituality was also so beautifully integrated in the political philosophy, right? Guided by truth, compassion, self-restraint. We were talking about yesterday about the yums and niyams, that so these are the kind of qualities that one needs in order to uh, you know rule. So in Upanishads also they say that an ideal ruler is one uh, who kind of unites, who actually brings together the wisdom, the material wisdom, and the spiritual insight. So, for example, apar vidya and the paravidya, both bringing together, is what culture and spirituality talks about in politics. So, in short, IKS views on politics is spiritual, ethical kind of an enterprise. Leadership rooted in dharma, dedicated to public welfare, and harmonized in a cosmic order. So, um, this is what we talk when we talk about the politics and governance from the IKS perspective. Now, a little bit of a shift we take. I mean, I just recall my very, very initial classes about political science, and I don't remember talking about this. I remember straight talking about Greece. I still, remember talking about what is the meaning of politics, right? And we go to the Greek definition of uh, politics. So once you kind of understand the system, the ancient system of what our people talked about, it's nothing that it is ancient. Such a foresight to say that this is how every country or region should be ruled. And when this happens, then there is very little scope to see of people, the citizens of that particular country unhappy. Going a little further, a very nice quote by Dr. Bengali Gopal saying, uh, enlightened monarchies, free citizens, decentralized political units glued together by spiritual and cultural unity were the essence of the political India in past. I think this particular quote by Gopalji kind of, uh, you know, brings together, in short, that what is the perspective of IKS when it comes to political science or governance that way, right? So, if we have to summarize it, let's just go through this way. Uh, Vedic period, the Rig Veda and Atharvaveda, the core principle of governance was dharma, order, collective decision making. Come to the Upanishadic period, ethical self-governance, moral leadership. You talk about Ramayana, Mahabharata, Raj Dharma, accountability, justice. Talk about Manusmriti, the Dharma Shastra, the codified law, social order, welfare. Talk about Kautilya's Arthashastra, pragmatism, welfare, decentralization. You read the Jataka tales and all. Over there also you'll see compassion, morality based kind of rule, right? Go to the Puranics, the Vishnu Puran, the Agni Puran or the other Purans. There also the divine kinship, public welfare was given importance, right? Panchatantra and all, if you read Niti Sar and all, political ethics, education, diplomacy. So everywhere, in every period that you go, the core principle of governance was all intertwined with uh, spirituality and the material wisdom, right? So this transparency part of governance is seen in the IKS perspective. These are the some repository that Dr. Niti has put there, of course, others also. But normally when we come across Arthashastra, Manusha Smriti, Shanti, Shantipat, and this word I find it very difficult to pronounce. Tirukular from southern part of India. So these are some great knowledge that you can see, which discusses politics, which discusses governance, right, from the our indigenous perspective. Um, there's a little example. I was just doing a little search on this, and I came to know this is Surga. This seems to be from the Valmiki Ramayana, from I think Ayodhya Kand. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what I found out in my study. And this is the time when I think when Sri Ram, he comes from the Vanvas and he meets Bharat. Bharat was the proxy that time. He said he would rule on behalf of Lord. They say that this is a conversation that happened between Ram and Bharat when Ram asked Bharat that, Bharat, tell me, how did you rule when I was in my absence? What did you do? Did you follow these things? I mean, did you respect the people? I mean, did you respect? Was there respect for wisdom? Did you honor the scholars, the elders, the teachers, the physicians? Right? Did you take care of the moral vigilance? Did you see that there was no corruption taking place? Did you see that the greeds and the greedies and the fake advisors were taken care of? What did you do in my absence? How did you rule? Did you take care of the economics? Did you take care of the timely wages were paid to the people or not? Right? So the economic responsibility. He asked about the agriculture, the farmers' protection. He talked what happened during my rule. I mean, during your rule, did you take care of the farmers? Did you protect them? Right. So the conversation was that, oh Bharat, was the spiritual accountability there? Was dharma taken care of? Was economic responsibility taken care of? Was social harmony taken care of? Was the moral vigilance taken care of? So, I mean, this is an example to show that how the rulers, for them, the praja was so important. Like they themselves, for their personal life was kept aside, and it was the king who had to take care of his people. It was his kartavya, it was his duty that these things were followed up. So this is a very beautiful kind of a example that we can say that how ruling and governance was considered. A little time on Arthashastra, one of the ways where we can say how our politics and governance took place then. Arthashastra, we all know about it by Vishnu Gupta, known as Chanakya Kautilya. A very nice serial in Doordarshan many, many years ago was aired. I was that time very young when I used to see, and it's highly inspirational serial. I think it is still available and on YouTube. Must have a watch. So Arthashastra, a very renowned political economy manual. It has 6,000 shloks, 150 chapters, and 15 books. So that's the kind of man we had as Chanakya. So just a little bit of understanding, overview of what the book contains, what Chanakya talked about, around 4th century BCE. A very comprehensive guide, they call it, guide to statecraft, guide to governance, guide to economic policies, right? So, Artha, when we say, definitely talks about the material well-being, and Shastra, of course, we call it a treatise, or it's a science, basically, science of material well-being, right? So it covers areas like law, it covers areas like economy, administration, taxation, diplomacy, ethics, espionage, of course. So it's like it covers everything that a government or the governance requires. So it's like a very earliest manual on governance. We just talk about few very, very important highlights of the text about how the text addresses both the uh, it addresses both the internal and the external affairs, right? It talks about justice, welfare, defense, and diplomacy. So there's one very famous theory in Arthashastra by Chanakya. It's known as Sapta Anga theory. So in that, there are seven very important elements of a state, they say. And in his book, he says the number one element is king, which is known as Swami, and then the ministers, which are known as Amatyas, then the territory, the Janapadas, and fort, which is Durg, the treasury, army, right, and the allies, the friends. So the book mentions that how it is so important that all these elements, there has to be, if you want a very stable state, that in the stable state, we require a harmony among all these elements. So if all these elements are in sync and if they are in proper communication, then definitely we have a strong, stable state. So that's the scope, the statecraft and administration part when he talks about. He also talks about idealism and realism in governance. He says that dharma, that is the ethical rule, with artha, that is the practical policies, has to be kind of blended. So he says that the king must be very disciplined, first of all. A king cannot be, the kind of, sometimes we do see that some kings, they had this tendency of, pleasure seeking. But according to Chanakya, the king must be very, very disciplined. So I think over here, the yoga philosophy really integrates well. So disciplined, he has to be educated and devoted to public affairs. These are the very important requirements that a king must have. Governance should balance justice with pragmatic tools. So Chanakya was a very practical kind of a person. He did not believe in too much. He says, you call a spade a spade. If one particular thing is needed for the welfare of the larger part of the country, then even if it means a little bit of immoral thing, doesn't matter, because at large, the country, Rashtra, has to be in focus. So governance should balance justice with pragmatic rules. So intelligence, diplomacy, and timely punishment is what he felt should be done, right? And at the same time, he said that citizens also have their own kartavya. Unke bhi kuch duties hote hain. So citizens must act very honestly, right? So here the citizens, they do their duties, apna kartavya citizens karenge by having a good conduct. And here the government must protect and promote the welfare of the people. So this, when it happens, it naturally brings a lot of growth, prosperity, and happiness in the society. He also was his foresight for economic and administrative vision was also equally very sharp. Agriculture, trade, taxation, he considered them as the pillars of prosperity in the economic terms. Military, he gave great importance to a very strong military, defense strategies, fortification, using of spies, is what he felt is very, very important in order to secure your borders. When it came to revenue, taxation, he said taxation is important, but it again has to be balanced, moderate. It should not kind of exploit people or bring burden on people. So taxation, moderate and just, right? Oppression has to be avoided that way. Administration, clear salary structures, accountability, and audits to prevent corruption. So can you imagine, I mean, when I was going through this, I felt that what a man he must have been. I mean, how did he think about these things so minutely? So, I mean, it really makes you feel very proud. So when Chanakya talks about all these things, definitely he is influenced by his Vedic and Upanishad traditions. He has kind of synthesized the old and the new ideas. He definitely was influenced by Brihaspati and Shukra. Brihaspati had his information written on the diplomatic ethics, whereas Shukra is more related to the law and justice that way. So Chanakya actually expanded their ideas. He made it into, into more rational, strategic, and very holistic. So it's a like kind of a blend of idealism and real politics. So, in short, if we have to say, Arthashastra actually represents the Indian knowledge system, most profound expression of the ethical yet very practical governance, where you see power serving people, public welfare, and bringing that kind of a balance in the society. So, that's so what we were discussing was the key theoretical contributions of Arthashastra. So in nutshell, this book is all about comprehensive theory of statecraft. It has given a theoretical understanding, the Sapta Anga theory. It talks about Rajdharma, ethics of power. It talks about realist political philosophy. It talks about economic governance, administrative science, foreign policy and warfare, internal security and intelligence. Every aspect of governance from A to Z seems to have been covered by Arthashastra, right? So a very good theoretical synthesis of politics, economics and ethics and administration. So of course grounded in realism, yet guided by moral responsibility. So I think that's about it. These are the characteristics of the Indian political philosophy. I think I've already kind of discussed a lot on this. The dharma part we have talked about. I can just throw a little light at how the integration of our politics with social and moral order was done. Say, for example, the 4 varnas were there. Now, these 4 varnas were nothing to do with the caste as such. It was more about bringing an order in the society. It was more about each varna doing its duties. They were pretty flexible. One could go up, down, according to their own attributes. So, but this was basically society that was organized, and each varna had specific duties contributing to the societal harmony. In a similar way, the 4 Purusharths, they talk about the aim of human life, like the dharma that we keep talking about, dharma, duty, kartavya, ethics. So it's all about the 4, every human life, all of us, it is our duty to earn earth, right? We all have to be wealthy, we all have to be prosperous that way, where we can take care of our sustenance. Kama, the desires, the pleasure, of course, has to be taken care of also. Ultimately, we are humans, right? And and ultimately the moksha part of it. So unless we don't go through the process of dharma, unless we don't go through the process of artha, kama, moksha will not come. Moksha will only come when we have gone through these cycles of our human purposes, right? So it's a guide, both personal conduct and political decision making. So the 4 Purusharthas and the 4 ashrams that we talk of is, the brahmacharya, the grahas, the vanprastha, the sannyas ashram. These are all kind of responsibilities at different life stages, which kind of influences the governance indirectly, not directly that way. Swadharma and Swakarma. Each individual and the ruler is expected to follow their own duty, and perform their designated work. So in short, politics is just not isolated from ethics. It is a part of a larger moral and social order. So politics, social and moral order, all integrated, right? Rooted in the principles of morality. Dharma as the basis of politics, right? So, so I think this is, in short, I could have, talked about Chanakya and his nitis. This is some of very beautifully. It says this is a very important. I like this. It says that this देश में आदर नहीं, जीने के साधन नहीं, विद्या प्राप्त करने के स्थान नहीं, वहाँ पर रहने का कोई लाभ. Look at the foresight, right? And for the rulers, for the king, this is so relevant for our politicians today also. The king who goes on the illegal path and doesn't care to the pains and problems of his citizens, he will be destroyed by his own selfishness. In the same way, a man who does not care for his society dies. I mean, these are like goosebumps. हिंदी में बोलते हैं रोंगटे खड़े हो जाते हैं उस टाइप के इनके ये वो है. I also remember from the serial. I mean, I'll quickly try to wind this up. In this serial, there was one dialogue of Chanakya, which I was seeing Doordarshan ने aired है, जहाँ पे king को challenge करते हैं, बोलते हैं कि don't mess with a teacher because teacher के गोद में जो है प्रलय and growth दोनों होते हैं. So a teacher can destroy and a teacher can also create. So there was such strong kind of words that he used to use, which it really kind of motivates all of us. So this is our great Chanakya, great reference for him. I would like to kind of now come to the part of where do we differ from the Western world. IKS in no way tries to bring down any kind of culture or philosophy or try to look down upon. No, it's not that. IKS is only talking about what our system is about. So we are not. If we are trying to bring a kind of a kind of a comparison, it is not to say that the Western guys are bad. No way. We are just trying to say that, look, we are different. Our system, our region, our culture, our philosophy is different than them. How it is different? If you see from the foundational principle part of it, we are more dharma-based, right? Where our politics revolves around the duties, ethics, moral order, rather than just laws. When you see the political thought, they are more right-based, right? Their focus is on individual rights, more personal freedom and legal entitlements that way. Then if you see the other part, the focus part, we are more duty-centric, right? Like our emphasis is on responsibilities of the rulers and the citizens over the individual claims. Like in the Western, it is more individual-centric, right? The emphasis is on the personal autonomy, liberty, and self-interest, right? In a similar way, the role of state, if you see the role of state in the Indic philosophy, it's more like a protector, right? Our state ensures security, social harmony, well-being. Whereas if you see it from the Western perspective, it is more on freedom, social justice, secularism, that way. So nothing, wrong this side or that side. It's just that we are differently rooted in our culture system, that way. So philosophical basis, you see, again, we are spiritually and culturally united. They are secular and more rational. Our ultimate goal is societal order and harmony. In the Western, it is more individual liberty and justice, like, ensuring personal rights, legal equality, protection from arbitrary powers. But in the Indic perspective, if you see, it's like, entire societal order and harmony is being talked about over here, right? So the takeaway, Indic political thought is collective. It is duty-driven. It is morally anchored, right? Whereas in the Western political thought, it is more individual-focused, more rights-driven, more legally, rationally grounded, that way. So that's the difference that we can see when we see the Indic political philosophy and the Western political thought. Definitely, we cannot complete the session without remembering Sri Aurobindo. He also, conceptualized the political system, So, Rashtra, Rajya, Pradesh, Gram, right? It was envisioned these were the things that our governance rooted in the very natural social and cultural hierarchies, right? So he gave importance to the village, right? From village to nation. So Gram to Rashtra. So emphasizing that each level has a very distinct responsibility and must work in harmony, and it works in harmony that way. So over here also Sri Aurobindo, he tries to connect spirituality and cultural unity as political foundations. And even according to him, the principles of governance emphasizes on decentralization. we believe that, to empower the local bodies and communities so that they can take decisions, which reduces, excessive centralization that way. Party politics is discarded, like political parties, in his views, they create divisions, like they distract from the higher purpose of governance. Simplification of politics, where political systems should focus on the essentials, avoiding unnecessary complicities of bureaucracy, you call it. Local empowerment, again, villages, local communities. He considered them as the foundation of self-reliant governance, right? Participation and transparency, again, governance should involve citizens very actively, right? And maintain this openness in administration, because ultimately we are the people who know what the ground reality is. So governance should involve the citizens that way. So, so this is Sri Aurobindo for us. In the end, where did we go wrong? Well, there are many places we can talk that we went wrong. Of course, in the initial part, we discussed that we were unable to kind of manage the several group identities that were there after the independence. So we were unable to kind of reconcile that. Of course, the full process of decolonization did not really take place. It was reflecting in our constitution, our judiciary, administration, education system. Education, precisely, I would, kind of emphasize. Colonial values, were carried forward. So these were the things that, if at that time were taken care of, probably, we would have been in a better situation. But of course, not blaming anybody for that. The time that the British left and we were in a condition which needed, some other kind of, understanding. So maybe at that moment, whatever happened. But yes, it is good that now we have started discussing about our past knowledge. It is good that now we have started, taking our agency in our hands and all. So I guess this is what we had to discuss for today. Let's not leave without this. This is very important. India is not just a nation state manufactured in 1947. It is an ancient civilization with a remarkable and unique cultural continuity across time and space. India is an ancient continuing civilization that is slowly being transferred into a nation through the agency of a modern state, right? So beautifully, said. And I think we can just end it by saying that whichever subject you take, you talk about politics, you talk about sociology, you talk about psychology, science, you talk about all the material wisdom, knowledge that you talk of, our ancient system had seen the future, like it had seen how it's going to come ahead. And it seems that everything they incorporated, looking at what the future, it seems as if they read Kal Yug Mein Kya Hone Wala Hai and they incorporated everything in their knowledge system. So on that note, thank you so much. I hope I've done justice. We can keep the floor open for discussions. And thank you so much, everyone. Yeah, Nidhi, over to you. We can discuss and add more knowledge.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pratibha. Very interesting sharing of thoughts and ideas on the vast heritage of political thought, administrative thought, governance models and mechanisms. This is such a vast topic, and we are just introducing it. Overview helps so that we can delve deep into any specific aspects that may interest us. And you have taken important names like Chanakya, Sri Aurobindo, a lot of our traditional textual knowledge repositories, Mahabharata, Ramayana, Vedas, Upanishads, Shanti Parva, etc., and so much more, where one can discover gems of political governance and political thought. And I am glad that the introduction of IKS is making a difference, whereby earlier we used to start our classes with discussion of ancient Western political
Yes.
thought, especially that which is emanating from Greece, ancient Greece, because that is supposed to be the cradle of political thought in Western civilization. But now we have turned inwards. We have gone back to our roots, and we have started discussing what our political system has to offer to us. So the floor is open for questions. Chandra Mohan ji is thanking you for your presentation. Similarly, Dr. Tarun Kumar ji, Vinay Kumar ji have complimented you for an informative session.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Chandramohan, you were not there yesterday, so we should be punishing you now. Where were you? I was missing you so much yesterday. And,
Madam,
yes.
Namaskar, madam. Sorry, madam, due to some technical problem, I was on journey, so I could not catch.
No problem.
Madam. I am so worried, madam.
No problem. It's just actually I was missing you because, you are the one who keeps discussing and kind of throwing new knowledge, new light. So even Dr. Pallavi was not there yesterday.
Oh,
So,
madam.
yeah. So I was.
Thank you, madam. Because today what you have said is very important, madam. So because I don't want to disturb you, madam, Sri Aurobindo, madam, my personal opinion, madam, because we teach in the classes also.
Yes,
Sri
sir.
Aurobindo ji is the man who has actually exposed the true Indian nature of India, madam, Bharat.
True. Absolutely.
In all aspects, madam.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, absolutely. So we just touched upon few things because with the short time that
Yes, madam.
we have. So yes, but you're right. And this is just a drop. We have to dive into the ocean. So there's
Yes,
so much of gems that we have.
Yes, madam.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, madam. Thank you, Nidhi, madam, also. Thank you.
Thank you. So in fact, why I put Sri Aurobindo on the slide was because I strongly believe that if one has to follow any one particular political thinker, of course, we can take many more names here. There could be Swami Vivekananda, Tilak, Savarkar, Gandhi and Nehru in some senses, of course. But to me, and because I had put it on the slide, to me, if there is anybody who really embodies Indic political thinking in our recent political history, to me, it has to be Sri Aurobindo. If you listen to the speech that he delivered, his Uttar Para speech, all his writings, they are a true reflection. I think he understood India very well, and it is interesting how he transitioned from being a revolutionary to being a spiritual seeker. So, of course, currently, for example, I'm exploring Dr. Kanhaiya Lal Munshi's work, and most of his work is in Gujarati, and it may be very locally and culturally relevant to the region where I live in. But he's also written so much on India's education system, economy, etc. So we could explore political thinkers from our own regions and find gems of wisdom that they share. But I put Sri Aurobindo on the slide for a reason.
Yeah, absolutely. And very well put, Nidhi. I must first thank Dr. Nidhi also. This entire slide, the PDF that you had seen was made by Dr. Nidhi. As I said, I was unable to make my own PPT, so I took it from her. So thank you, Nidhi, for that wonderful presentation over here. I just elaborated on your points, and I hope I've done it.
No, you did it perfectly well. And I think the spirit of IKS is that nothing is mine or yours. Everything is to be shared. Yeah. Knowledge is to be shared, and when knowledge is shared, it flourishes.
Definitely. And we must all know that knowledge is everywhere. We just have to tap into the knowledge, right?
Correct. Yeah. Okay, there is a question in the chat box which we could address, Dr. Pratibha, by Chandanaji. Could ancient monarchy and modern democracy be reconciled today? You can take that and then I can add to it. Good question by Chandanaji.
Yeah, very good question. So, see, how do you look at monarchy? If you talk about the Ram Rajya monarchy, then yes, that's democracy. That's democracy to the true sense, right? So we have to understand the nature of monarchy. What kind of monarchy are you talking about? So if we are talking about monarchy where the king actually understands his duties, then definitely you can do it. But if you're talking about monarchy from the other sense, which is like more authoritarian and all, then I think there's a different perspective to it. But I feel that a monarchy, so I'm not against monarchy. Give me a king like Ram, and I don't even want democracy. I mean, I hope I have kind of made any sense of that, Chandana ji.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So, just to add to what Chandana ji asked, uh, uh, we could look at it from both perspectives. It could be very, very simple to reconcile monarchical values that were truly rooted in Bharatiya Dharmic Indic ethos with modern day democracy, because democracy also has a lot of strengths. Democracy also puts us at a lot of advantages. So at on the one hand, the reconciliation could be very simple, whereby you could bring the best of both worlds, bring in great values of having a responsible king, having a responsible citizenry, having a great value system backed up by dharma, with a modern day democracy which offers adult franchise, which offers free speech, which offers equal rights, which offers institutional division of power, etc., etc. So, on the face of it, the reconciliation looks easy, but it is also tricky, because the monarchy that gave way to modern day democracy is rooted in Western civilization, and the experience that Western civilization has had with monarchy has not been a pretty good experience. For example, I'll share my travel experiences from Europe with all of you. I've traveled to about 10 countries in Europe, and when you visit their museums and public places, they don't have very good memories of monarchical rule. So, what kind of monarchy and what kind of democracy do we want a reconciliation of and with? So, if we want to, if our current modern Indian democracy would be based on Bharatiya ethos, which to me it is not. Even our constitution, of course, it has its own positives and strengths, and it's a great constitution, no doubt, but it also has colonial vestiges and colonial influences. It is not completely and truly based on Bharatiya ethos. So, if we had adopted a democratic model of governance stemming from ancient monarchical values, where there was more democracy than what we see today, then the reconciliation would be easier. Right now, it looks very tricky and difficult, in my opinion. This is strictly my personal opinion.
No, absolutely correct. So therefore, I said that if you can give us Ram kind of a understanding, then it is fine, because in Ram Rajya you had everything. You had democracy, you had freedom of speech, you had everything over there. So that kind of a monarchy can work. But you very rightly put that monarchy can turn into an authoritarian, and I mean, we should not risk it at this moment in the current times.
Yeah. Thank you, Pratibha, for adding up. There is a comment by Atul Thakurji. He suggested that in the North Indian context, Kalhana's Raj Tarangani would be a better starting point to understand IKS in political context. Thank you, Atulji, for sharing this reading and reference and insight with us. I have not heard about this text, but going from here, all of us would be very interested in exploring this. And what Dr. Pratibha did try to do was give a very generic and broad overview of our ancient political traditions, and it is noteworthy that in each part of India, the political thought and political traditions were different, and they had their own sources, own textual and oral references, because we were primarily an oral tradition, which is what we are going to talk about in the last session. So yes, there are, so for example, one of the texts is Thiruvalluvar's Tirukkurul, which is a text from the southern part of the country. So there are these local, traditional, regional, place-oriented textual and oral traditions that one could discover. And I always believe that in IKS, it's good to not get overwhelmed by making an attempt to know everything under the sun, but by focusing on one aspect and then deep diving and investigating it and researching on it and making it your niche or focus area.
True, very true.
Okay, so Chandra Mohanji, last word to you since you had raised your hand, and then we close today's session. Yes, Chandra Mohanji, do you want to? Okay, I don't know. Okay, okay, Arpit Ji, if we are to articulate dharmic, economic, and political models, what would be its first principles and characteristics? Like something tangible rather than abstract concepts. Also, which public policy in Indian context do you feel to be very dharmic? Very quickly before Pratibha responds to this, Arpit ji, there is a book that I think Tanya ji had recommended, recently released book, Dharmonomics. You can refer to that. I am not from the economics background, so kind of difficult for me to comment, but Dharmonomics is a book that we can refer to. The second book that I would urge everyone to read. In fact, I would urge everyone to read two books. One is Indian Conservatism by Jaitirtha Reddy, if I get the last name correct. Jaitirtha Rao, not Reddy, sorry. Jaitirtha Rao, Jerry Rao. Wonderful exposition of Indian conservative thought. And by conservative, we don't mean it in the Western sense. Indian conservative thought in the political, aesthetic, economic, social sense. And the other book is by Harsh Madhusudan and Rajiv Mantri and Harsh Madhusudan, which is India as a civilizational state. I think if you get to read these two books, you'll have the answer to your question. Yeah, Pratibha, if you want to respond.
Yeah, I think for me also it will be a little difficult, but whatever little I can understand is that, the dharma wala part where we talk about, I think we need to bring dharma as in, like more moral and a natural order, where there is a balance, the social balance is there. And the whole idea of human flourishing is what the goal should be. So a dharmic state could kind of align with policies like justice and harmony and sustainability. So, I mean, very briefly, I could kind of put it across. So more of a ecological balance and collective welfare kind of an understanding. But I think, for us also, it would be good for us to read more on this, that how we could kind of align. Yeah.
I think Pratibha has answered it absolutely perfect. Any public policy which is informed by dharmic ethos. And where do our dharmic ethos stem from? They stem from Vedas, Puranas, Upanishads, Itihasa, Dharma Shastra, Niti Shastra, all our knowledge repositories. So dharma as the central focal point of economic policy, public policy, political decision-making, administrative frameworks, governance models, etc. If there is one concept which we could pin down to, that is dharma. I think you're asking which public policy. Today's public policies are not informed by dharmic ethos. So I don't see them as indic, but if all the aspects of dharma like sustainability, justice, equanimity, harmony, etc. are taken care of, then it would be truly a public policy from an indic perspective. Also, Arpitji, you spoke of tangible aspects. I think there is some misnomer amongst people like us who are pursuing IKS that it is only about abstract concepts. No, I don't think that it is. We should take it that way. IKS is a lot about practical aspects. In yesterday's session by Dr. Pratibha, we understood that the application of yoga helps us in leading a happy, fulfilled, and blissful life, which is what makes an individual, society, and country very happy. Our storytelling traditions, our ways of conserving environment. So, for example, if you have to look at the recent Padma Award winners in the recent decade, the last decade, all of them are great examples of the application of Indic dharmic concepts in real life. कोई बहुत कोने में पेड़ लगा रहा है, कोई किसी ने बहुत अच्छी समाज सेवा की है, कोई इंडिजिनस आर्ट फॉर्म को बचा के रखा है, उसकी प्रैक्टिस को कंटिन्यू कर रहा है. This is tangible. They are actually applying Indic Bharatiya dharmic concepts, and there is a wonderful book curated by Indic Academy, People's Padma. If again I don't remember the name, but I can share it in the group. The stories of these Padma Award winners. अगर आप इनकी stories पढ़ेंगे तो आपको पता चलेगा कैसे इन लोगों ने अपनी लाइफ में, they may not be very well read, they are living in the remotest corner of the country, they may not have access to technology, they may not be well educated, but इन्हीं लोगों ने धर्म को और इंडिक प्रिंसिपल्स को बचा के रखा है. चिपको मूवमेंट कोई पॉलिसी नहीं, इट्स एन एक्शन. कि पेड़ है, नेचर है, एनवायरमेंट है, इसको बचाने के लिए पीपल क्लिंग टू ट्रीज. सो चिपको मूवमेंट सो फेमस, राइट? Chhat Puja. Very recently, there were so many videos about Chhat Puja. It's become a global festival. You are providing argh to the rising sun, to the setting sun, right? Chhat Puja से ज़्यादा sustainable और practical, tangible sustainability का concept क्या हो सकता है, right? So we have to look at these aspects and we have to derive policy from actionable elements rather than doing the opposite. पहले policy बना दी, फिर action किया. नहीं, हमारे आसपास बहुत सारे ऐसे एक्शनेबल एग्जाम्पल्स हैं जिससे हम पॉलिसी बना सकते हैं, which is truly rooted in our own culture.
So collective welfare is what we look at the tangible indicator basically.
Correct, absolutely. Okay, so let's close for today. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Dr. Pratibha, for 2 wonderful sessions. We will miss you tomorrow because you won't be joining. Dr. Pratibha has her yoga class and academic engagements. So tomorrow and day after, I will be with you. And of course, Dr. Vikas will also be with us. And tomorrow we will be talking about the IKS corpus, the knowledge repository and the knowledge corpus that we have in Bharatiya Gyan Parampara, which we can explore and pursue as IKS enthusiasts. So we hope to see you tomorrow and day after. Please note that the certificate distribution instructions and the feedback link will be shared with all of you in the last session on 8th November.
Yes.